Hello, and welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale, and my gosh, do we have so much to cover today. Before we get started, how is your Wednesday doing? How are all of you beautiful people doing out there? I know that it is a cold day out here in Missouri, where I am at. We've gotten a ton of snow. I have been hibernating all day today, all yesterday, but I had to wake up from my slumber to come and give you all the good news, all the good stories, right? So much to cover, so much to talk about. I hope you are doing so good, staying warm. Wednesday, I posted there was a story that happened at my school that I go to where one of my professors was going on a Trump derangement syndrome rant while I was in the classroom, and it was very much unprovoked. And I posted a little tweet about it, and somehow that tweet got 7.5 million followers. And maybe some of you here are watching this today because you saw that viral post go out there. So we welcome all of our new viewers in today. Hopefully there's a few of them out there. But we have so much to talk about today. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go and see my pinned post on my X account, and you will see it on there. And the thing that I have to say, I'll keep it brief, was that I posted a picture of myself alongside that tweet, which is what I really think got like the tweet to blow up, just because I find that pictures do better on X for some reason when they go along with words. But it always amazed me because all my posts where there's a picture like goes viral of me, it's not even like a good looking picture. Like it couldn't have even been like a picture of myself in in this look, where I am right now, where I think, I think I look decent here. The picture of myself, I didn't even think looked all, it looked all that good. So, I also need a haircut. I got this long hair, and for some reason, this like little piece of hair right here will not stay where I want it to go, and I'm just like messing up. I'm just messing up all my hair right now. So you're gonna have to deal with it. You're gonna have to deal with it. It's just gonna be hanging out there, right there in my face. I can't seem to get it to to stay up. So regardless, you might see me fixing my hair, but like I was saying, all posts that blow up for some reason, they never have like a good picture go along with them. I never think I look that good in them. But you know what? Enough of me complaining about my lack of picture taking abilities. Let's get right into the stories. We have so many to cover and not enough time to do it. So here we go. All right. So our first story comes from, I scroll down because I'm obviously reading my news before I get into it. So first story comes from the Hill. It's entitled, "The Trump Administration Rescinds Approval of New York's Congestion Pricing Plan." So if you don't remember, so New York City, under, I guess this was the Department of Transportation action under Joe Biden. I thought this was actually downtown New York. I didn't think the federal government had anything to do with this. But from what I understand, downtown New York was imposing a plan to start charging people who drove into Manhattan some sort of fee to do so, some sort of toll to do this. And I guess this was coming from Department of Transportation. But the Trump administration has rescinded that order, which, let's read the story and I'll talk about it. So, the Trump administration rescinds the Biden-era approval of New York's toll charging $9 for drivers to enter part of Manhattan. $9 to drive into Manhattan. I don't even want to go to Manhattan, let alone pay $9 to go there, right? So the move is a blow to officials in New York City and New York State, including Governor Kathy Hochul, who touted the toll program as reducing both traffic congestion and air pollution. However, opponents of the plan, including President Trump and the Democrats in neighboring states such as New Jersey, say that the plan imposed unnecessary costs on consumers. New York State's congestion pricing plan is a slap in the face of working class Americans and small business owners, Sean Duffy, who's the new transportation secretary, said in a written statement. Commuters using the highway system to enter New York City have already financed the construction and improvement of these highways through the payment of gas taxes and other taxes. But now the toll program leaves drivers without any free highway alternative and instead take more money from working people to pay for a transit system and not highways, he added. So today, the MTA filed papers in federal court to ensure that the highly successful program, which has already dramatically reduced congestion, bringing reduced traffic and faster travel times while increasing speeds for buses and emergency vehicles, will continue notwithstanding this baseless effort to snatch those benefits away from millions of mass transit users, pedestrians, and especially the drivers who come to the Manhattan Central Business District, said the CEO of the MTA. So I have a couple of things. So I was actually kind of in favor of this being put in place. New York does have a traffic congestion problem, and putting measures like tolls in place to help reduce the number of people driving to the city versus taking public transit, I didn't think was the worst thing in the world. Folks, they are doing what sounds like erecting an entire skyscraper outside of my window right now. Do not ask me what it is. I don't want to hear anyone complain about the noise. If you can hear any stray noise in the background, I don't know what's happening outside of there, but something's going on. Just keep that in mind. I'm hearing it come up again. I thought it stopped, but you can tell I'm a little annoyed by it. Anyways, back to the story. So I had thought that this was not that bad of an idea. In densely populated urban areas like New York, using public transportation is a pretty good option for you, just because, cars take up a lot of space, especially when there's one person in each one of them. To be clear, I'm not a proponent of getting rid of cars. I'm a very pro-car kind of guy out here. But, driving into the city, I think, is kind of a nightmare, as is driving to any city is kind of a nightmare. And when you have a subway system as robust as New York's is, it makes a lot of sense for commuters to be using that over driving directly into their workplace, right? So I was kind of a proponent of this when it started. I was kind of on the other side, but after learning that it seems like this was an order put in place by the federal government versus from the state government, I've totally changed my opinion. The federal government should have no business in putting taxes like this going into cities like this. I think that's stupid. If the city of New York, I think that this is a localism. This is a localism issue if I've ever seen one. If the city of New York wants to put a tax on people driving into the city, I think they should do so. People can go and complain to their city council people if they don't want it. Same thing, even if the state of New York want to do that, I think it makes sense. But for the federal government to do that, I don't think it makes sense. This was a good move. I've changed my opinion on it. So good move by the Department of Transportation. And the ball's in New York City's court. Go and put your own tolls on it. Don't rely on us to do it for you. So that's that. All right. So moving on. Also, another New York story. We got protests happening in downtown New York City. So anti-Israel protests erupts into mayhem in Orthodox Jewish neighborhoods in NYC as agitators chant, "Zionists go to hell." My God. So let's read this story. So an anti-Israel protest erupted into violence and mayhem as a swarm of demonstrators flooded a primarily Orthodox Jewish neighborhood in Brooklyn on Tuesday night. One person was arrested after dozens of agitators chanted, "Zionists go to hell," and waving Palestinian flags descended upon Borough Park to protest a real estate event, according to police and reports. To protest a real estate event? What kind of real estate event are they protesting? So, couple things about this. Number one, I think it's so laughable and really shows the racist intentions of these protesters by willingly going into neighborhoods that are primarily Jewish, that have nothing to do with Israel. I'd like to know, this is what I'd like to know, in this neighborhood where they're going and protesting, how many people who live there actually have any sort of say in what happens in Israel? I would hazard a guess that very few to none, right? So I think it's laughable that you have people going in and doing these protests just to make a scene. But all of that, what is this doing for anything, right? You're just making yourself look foolish when you say Zionists go to hell. You're not doing anything to help the cause in any way, right? If the idea is to get people to look more fondly upon the Palestinian community and to get people to come around to their point of view, telling a group of people to go to hell is not doing anything to help that, right? I mean, am I wrong here? I'm just saying. So I think that's really laughable. And on top of that, I tweeted out that I had seen video of this. You can go see my tweet from earlier today of where do they find these people to come and do these protests? How do people even know this is happening? I'm in my entire time being in the political community, I have never once heard of a protest happening anywhere in the country that like I could have even gone and been a part of. I've only ever seen the aftermath of those protests happening. How do people even know these things are happening? Like, do they all have like little pagers or something that they're all like connected into a little network and everything? They get pager and they all show up. I've heard people speculating that people get bussed in, but where are they bussing in people from? Right? Who's organizing all this? This is what I want to know. Who's organizing all these things, right? Same thing with like last year with all like the university protests and everything that happened. Who's organizing all these? Where are these people even coming from? That's what I want to know. So if anyone can answer that question for me and tell me actually, where these people are coming, is there a Facebook out there for people who want to be in protests? Like what are the logistics behind all this? Is someone bringing like oranges, like to snack on everything, orange slices, right? Someone bringing a pitcher of water. What's happening here? What are the logistics behind putting an event like this together? Anyways, so let's continue on. All right. So let's talk about inflation for a minute. So Donald Trump acknowledges inflation is back, but blames Joe Biden. All right. So President Donald Trump, in an interview with Fox News' Sean Hannity that aired Tuesday night, acknowledged that inflation is on the rise again, bucking his campaign promise to lower prices immediately upon taking office. But he said that the Biden administration's runaway spending is to blame. Quote, inflation is back, Trump said. I had nothing to do with it. These people have run the country. They spent money like nobody has ever spent money. They've spent so much money, right? Trump is right about the return of inflation. Consumer prices rose much more than expected last month, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported last week. In particular, a surge in fuel and egg prices. So January marked the biggest monthly increase since August of 2023. The prices were 3% higher year over year than the first time since June 2024. The president is right that he can't shoulder much of the blame. Former President Joe Biden occupied the Oval Office for 19 and a half of the 31 days covered by the most recent report. Biden signed an infrastructure bill that included green energy projects and cost more than $1 trillion in 2021, and COVID tax relief that was $3.4 trillion, as well as he added roughly $5 trillion in the past 2 years. So I think that a lot of things that are happening right now in the United States that Trump is being blamed for is just the sheer fact that he has not been in office long enough to really even begin to address these issues. I've heard a lot of people complaining that the Trump administration hasn't done enough for this, hasn't done enough for that, hasn't done enough for this. Guys, he still has cabinet positions that haven't even gotten into office yet, right? How can you expect him to actually go about doing a lot of these policy agendas until he has an entire team of Avengers in positions of power ready to go and do those things, right? So I give him a pass, right? If we get to this point next year, right, January 2026, and inflation still hasn't gone down any significant amount, then I'm going to be a little upset, because that was a promise by the administration to do so, and people are still getting hurt by prices right now at the grocery store, at the gas pump. Just prices in general are higher. Inflation is up across the board, right? I'm going to show an inflation chart in just a minute. But if we get a year down the road and nothing has changed, then I think we're a little bit more to blame to start pointing fingers at the Donald. But I think that people also forget how slow government still moves. Trump has been moving very fast as opposed to someone like Joe Biden, who really wasn't a president for even 4 years, right? We really had him asleep at the wheel the whole time. But it's still government, and it still takes time for things to be enacted because there are measures that things have to go through that the president has no authority over and has no way to manipulate, right? I mean, you can still enact a policy, and that policy still takes months and months and months to actually see anything change because of it, because the entire market has to shift, right? So, give him a break. We have plenty of time, right? Get back to me in a year. We'll see where inflation is at then. But I just want to pull up the inflation, chart just so we could see it. So here we are in 2025. So we're at about a 3% annual inflation right on the dot here for January of 2025. So this is by total year. I couldn't find one off the top of my head that had month by month in it, but you can kind of see the trend. So Trump comes in office right here in 2017 and inherits Obama's 2.1% inflation, which was up, basically a point and change from 2015. That was at 0.7, right? So big spending change that happened between there, and then pretty much it stayed roughly about the same on average from 17, 18, 19, and then took a dip down in 2020 due to COVID and everything. But for the most part, we had a subtle decline, and then COVID happened, and we had a ton of inflationary spending that happened under the Trump administration. Let's be clear, that shot us up to the highest inflation rate that we've seen in the past 10 years of 7%. And that's declined slightly because of that, but it still stayed above pre-COVID numbers, right? Pre-COVID numbers, we were at about a 2% inflation rate on average for the most part. And we've been sitting the past 4 years well above that. So I've always loved to hear whenever Democrats have complained that, oh my gosh, Joe Biden, he's bringing down inflation. Yes, he's bringing it down, but still going up from pre-COVID numbers, right? We're still dealing with the implications of that COVID spending years after it's happened. And Trump is partially to blame for that because he signed a lot of this in that issued in a lot of COVID spending. Joe Biden is to blame also for all the excessive spending he did under his administration. So we have a lot of people to point fingers at here, right? Nobody is not entirely at fault for the inflation situation that we're in right now. But, we're to hope that it goes down and we find a way to get our inflation under control. On top of that, just to defend Trump a little bit, looking back, we can say the spending was wrong, that we should not have done it, but you have to look at the position that he was in at the time and the people he had around him. So, I probably would have done the exact same thing if all the experts around me were telling me to issue in all this additional spending and everything, because we didn't know how long this was going to last for, and people needed to eat, right? So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, right, what Trump did, but we cannot talk about the inflation situation that we're in right now without bringing that up. And I think there's a little asterisk when we have to then say, hey, this was because of COVID. So let's keep that in mind. This wasn't just reckless spending. Like the Biden administration just had reckless spending, right? At least the Trump administration had some sort of reasoning behind doing it. All right. So moving on a little bit. So let's talk about Robert Kennedy Jr. and the health department for a minute. So Trump officials want to ban junk food from the SNAP program. Past efforts show it's not easy to do. So it's from AP. Let's talk about this. All right. So a push to ban sugary drinks, candy, and more from the U.S. program that helps low-income families pay for nutritious food has been tried before, but it may soon get a boost from the new Trump administration's officials. So RFK Jr., the new health secretary, and Brooke Rollins, the new agriculture secretary, have both signaled that they favor stripping such treats from SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So that stands for SNAP. Kennedy has been most vocal, calling for the government to stop allowing the nearly $113 billion program that serves about 42 million Americans to use benefits to pay for soda or processed foods. The one place that I would say that we need to really change policy in the SNAP program and food stamps and in school lunches, Kennedy told Fox News' Laura Ingraham last week. There, the federal government, in many cases, is paying for it, and we shouldn't be subsidizing people to eat poison. Couldn't agree more. The U.S. government should not be subsidizing Americans to get sugar addictions when they're on low-income assistance, right? There has been an argument made that I've seen people on the left make that we need to allow these unhealthy foods to be eaten by people on low-income assistance because they're cheaper and it's expensive to eat healthy. The fact of the matter is, when you really price it out, it really isn't. It might taste better to eat unhealthy and to buy these cheap and inexpensive foods, but you can survive just as well and even have a better life by eating simpler meals, but eating them on a healthy diet, right? The US government should not be subsidizing you to go out and be able to eat junk food, right, when you're on low income assistance. My tax dollars should not be going to pay it. We have an obesity problem in this country as it is. My money should not be spent on supporting companies like this, right? We should be getting a lot of these really unhealthy ingredients out of our food supply as soon as we can, because they're poisoning Americans. RFK is totally right. They're poisoning Americans. We have a chronic disease problem, a chronic disease epidemic happening in the United States. We have an obesity issue in the United States. We have so many issues that are tied to our diet and food supply in the United States. The federal government should be doing as much as it can to stop that from happening, right? If anything, we should be subsidizing people more to eat healthy food, right? So I think this is a great move by the Department of Health and Human Services. Go for it. Get this passed. Get it put in place. Get those unhealthy foods out of Americans' diets who are on these programs, and especially out of schools, right? We have, like I said, we have a childhood obesity issue in this country. Our schools should not be feeding our children these terrible, terrible foods, right? We should be feeding them healthy foods. They're not going to like it. They're going to go screaming, right? Nobody really likes to eat healthy foods. I might be like the one and only person who actually like enjoys eating things that are healthy for them. But I just feel better that way. But kids are not going to like it. People are not going to like it. It's going to be a hard push to get us there, but it is the right move going forward. And sometimes the things that benefit people the most are the things that they don't like at first, right? Or they push back the hardest on because it's affecting their quality of life. But overall, I think we're going to look back on moves like this and say, yeah, that was a good choice. That was a good idea, right? Anything to curb obesity, chronic illness in this country is a good move in my book. All right, let's move on. So this is a big piece of news coming up. So this is out of Kansas. So the Kansas legislature bans gender affirming care for minors after veto override. So this has been quite the battle in the state of Kansas. So I know this is a little bit more localized news here. So I'm from Missouri, and I want to paint a picture for you. So gender affirming care in the United States has been largely centered around major cities, right? Because that's where these providers are at, right? So these are hormone treatments. These are sex changes for minors, right? This is cutting off their healthy body parts. This is sterilizing them. This is shooting them up with chemical hormones that are changing their biology and putting them on medication for the rest of their life and have nothing but adverse circumstances because of it in the long term, right? We are past the point of even arguing now if these are positive or negatives for people. We've had the WPATH files and the CAS review come out. We know that these procedures are not suitable for children, right? Children should not be involved in this whatsoever. I have no sympathy at all for banning this across the board. I have no sympathy if you are a trans kid and cannot get your medical care anymore. I don't believe that's medical care. It is not. We have a plethora of evidence to prove that to be true. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the current state of gender affirming care here in the Midwest, at least. So Missouri's population is divided amongst St. Louis and Kansas City. They're the two biggest cities, and they basically push out from the other side of the state. So St. Louis borders Illinois, and Kansas City borders Kansas, right? If you are in either one of those two cities, you can get into the other state within a 10 to 20 minute drive, right? It's not that hard to do. They're literally right across the border, okay? So as we know, Illinois is a super liberal Democrat state. Gender affirming care is likely never to be banned in that state. They're always going to be a blue state as far as I'm concerned. So if you're in St. Louis, you pretty much have that option. So what happened in Missouri was Missouri banned gender affirming care. It's being revisited right now. There's a lot of people in Missouri who are fighting for that. If you are a Missouri resident or you want to support that, go and look up all the information behind that. There are plenty of good people out there who are trying to fight against who are trying to fight to uphold the ban of gender affirming care in Missouri. Jamie Reed, I think her username is Jamie Reed Whistleblower on X. Go follow her. I think she's the #1 person who is in the fight to keep this upheld. But basically, Missouri banned gender affirming care in Missouri. So you couldn't get any more Missouri hospitals or Missouri schools or anything like that. What was happening is a lot of people who were on hormone treatments and stuff didn't really affect them, as they just went over to Kansas or they went over to Illinois, right? It didn't really do all that much for them, right? It made them change providers, but they didn't really have to go that far. It wasn't like, it wasn't like the majority of our population is centered around Columbia, which is in the dead center of the state, and that's about an hour or two drive from any other state in any direction. So it wasn't like it was like that big of a monumental deal that people suddenly really couldn't access it, right? People, for the most part, in Kansas City and St. Louis just went over to joining states. So moving us forward in time, a lot of people here in Missouri, well, a lot of people here in Kansas fought really hard last year to get a ban on gender affirming care put in place in Kansas. That passed through the legislature, because the legislature right now is controlled by the Republicans, and the executive branch, which is the governor, Laura Kelly, she is a Democrat. Okay. So Laura Kelly vetoed the order to ban gender affirming care last year. All right. So there were a bunch of Republicans who were really wishy-washy on this. I think the veto, they tried to override the veto. I think it lost by like 1 or 2 votes. It was really insane. I myself was involved in this. I called over 100 legislators in the state of Kansas to try and have them uphold or override the veto at the time. And, our fighting did not get through at the time. But thankfully, we had it happen again. Kansas legislators passed banning gender affirming care for minors in the state. It was vetoed by Laura Kelly once again. And finally, Republicans got off their asses and upheld this ban, right? This is one of the biggest this is probably the largest human rights violation happening in the world right now to children, is gender affirming care, transgender care, cutting off healthy body parts of kids, all of that all wrapped together into one package. That, I think, is the biggest human rights violation in the world right now happening to anyone. So the fact that this has been banned unilaterally across the board is insane to me. But we had a win in Kansas, so I'll read the story to you, because there's a quote here that I literally read, and I could not believe this was in a news publication. So coming down here. So Kansas became the 27th state to impose limitations on gender affirming care for minors after Republican lawmakers overturned the Democrat governor's veto on Tuesday. The law is designed to take effect more quickly than usual, within days or weeks, and mandates that transgender minors currently receiving treatment discontinue care by the end of the year. So it's going to be really great for people of Kansas City, Missouri, as well as Kansas, because now they're not going to have anywhere to go, right? All the other adjoining states are way too far away. They're not going to be able to get to it. So this is the line that made me literally lose it as I'm reading this article. So, quote, "I just held my 16-year-old daughter and we cried while we watched them try to erase her existence," a Kansas City area mother of 2 transgender children told AP News. So dramatic. First off, if you have two kids who are transgender, I question your parenting ability. Do not try and tell me that there is not a social contagion aspect of transgenderism in the United States, right? Especially when we see families, like, have you seen the videos online of like the families where like one of the kids comes out as trans, and then all of a sudden the parent also decides that they're also trans, and then another one of the kids in the family also comes out as trans, or like all these Hollywood celebrities who have like 3 trans children, right? Do not tell me that there is not a social component to all of this. I guarantee you, mark my words, 10 years from now, we will know that to be a 100% true fact. And people like me who've been screaming about it for years will have been proven right once again. But the thing that blew my mind the most is, if we deconstructed the sentence, I just held my 16-year-old daughter in my arms and we cried while they tried to erase her existence, is basically saying that the only thing that makes your daughter valuable, or realistically your son valuable, is the fact that they're trans and the fact that they're being shot up with hormones and getting puberty blockers and having parts of their body cut off, right? That's the only thing that you think is valuable about your kid. That if that one thing does not become a reality, then her entire existence is erased. Your kid's entire existence is erased if you cannot shoot them up with hormone treatments, right? That's like me saying that, like, me being gay is the only thing about me that is that is valuable at all. I have no other distinguishable personality traits. There's nothing else about me that makes me me, right? Other than that one trait, right? That's the thing we have here. The only thing that you value about your kid is that you have a trans kid. You have two trans kids, right? My God, right? Blows my mind. Right, blows my mind. So that's all I gotta say about that. I don't know where they find these people for this. I mean, I guess AP News dug up some crazed leftists with a couple of trans kids to give a nice quote to. So, good job. Screw you, parents who are standing idly by and willing to inject your kids with hormones and cut their healthy body parts off. Honestly, shame on you. You were all awful parents. You should not be doing this, right? I will never change my mind on that. If you cut your kids' healthy body parts off, are you kidding me? Right? Don't do it. They're born with these for a reason. They have these body parts for a reason, right? You can't just change your gender, and cutting off a healthy body part does not do it for any reason, right? There's no reason why you should be cutting off the healthy body parts of any child, regardless of they're trans or not. No reason for it. All right. That's all I gotta say about that. We're already going over time, but I have more things to talk about. We'll go quickly. So, number one thing, the Trump administration labels 8 Latin American cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Fantastic. All right. So this is from AP News. So the Trump administration is formally designating 8 Latin American crime organizations as, quote, foreign terrorist organizations, upping its pressure on cartels operating in the U.S. and on anyone aiding them. The move, carrying out a January 20th executive order by President Trump, names a handful of these different groups. Pause to read. The only one that I can actually pronounce is MS-13, which we all know about MS-13. MS-13 has been causing terror for years in the Los Angeles area. It's a good thing they were put on here as a terrorist organization. They've been doing just that. The designation will be published in Thursday's edition of the Federal Register, according to a notice on Wednesday. The, quote, foreign terrorist organization label is unusual because it deploys a terrorist designation normally reserved for groups like Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State group that use violence for political ends, not for money-focused crime rings such as the Latin American cartels. I gotta disagree with you there. I've seen tons of crimes committed in the Los Angeles area by groups like MS-13, right? They are 100% a terrorist group on the United States, right? So maybe they're not comparable to groups like Al-Qaeda, but they certainly both deserve that distinction, right? The Trump administration argues that the international connections and operations of the groups, including drug trafficking, migration smuggling, and violence, push to extend their territory, warrant the distinction. No kidding, right? These are humongous human trafficking groups. They're drug trafficking. These are not good people. These are not good people at all. Do not go and hang out with them, right? Don't do it. Last story of the week I got to talk about. So the Social Security Administration Commissioner steps down over Doge requests. So Social Security Administration Acting Commissioner Michelle King left her job at the agency over billionaire Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency request to access sensitive government records, according to multiple reports, the sources familiar with her departure. Reports said that King, who worked for more than 30 years at the agency, stepped down on Sunday. President Donald Trump appointed Leland Dueck, who was in charge of the agency's anti-fraud office as acting commissioner, while nominating Frank, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, to be the head of the agency pending U.S. Senate confirmation. My question is, why is she stepping down, right? Is there something hidden in the Social Security Administration we don't know about? We already know that there are 20 million people in the database who are over 100 years old, right? 20 million people, okay? Why haven't those people been removed yet, right? If we know that these people are in the Social Security database, why are they still in there, right? Why haven't they been taken off? Great questions. I feel like this lady stepped down because she knows that there is rampant fraud within Social Security. We all know this. It's one of the largest government agencies in the country. They get Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid are the primary agencies that make up like all of the federal budget. That and the military take up basically 100% of it. Every other agency is a drop in the bucket compared to them. So if there's anywhere where rampant fraud is happening, it's inside these agencies. These are the big players here. These are the heavy hitters when it comes to fraud in the federal government. So I think she's trying to get out now so that she doesn't get caught up in the crossbreeds when they start digging around and finding rampant fraud and everything. If you had a commissioner who's truly dedicated to protecting people on Social Security and upholding all the law, the rules and regulations that govern Social Security, she wouldn't have left, right? If you had someone who's actually concerned about the wrong people accessing sensitive documents in Social Security, she wouldn't have left, right? She would have stuck around, protected every American who has records with Social Security, right, from having those records looked into. But I think that she knows that there's rampant fraud within the administration and doesn't want to be caught in the breeze when it is found out. So we will be sure to keep you updated on all of that. But with that, that is the end of today's show. Hope you enjoyed it. I know that I enjoyed the show greatly. I hope that anyone new out there who is watching the show really enjoyed it. This is our typical format for the most part. Usually we're about 10 minutes shorter, right? Typically try to shoot for half an hour. We're going to about 40 minutes at this point. But we just had so many things to talk about. So many things happened in the past couple of days that needed to be discussed on the show. So we'll be back here Monday. Our show is up Monday and Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. You can watch it on YouTube, X, Rumble, Instagram, right? Follow me on TikTok. You can find me on all these platforms at Homonetian. You can find the show on Rumble at Spin Cycle Live. You can also follow the official show page at Spin Cycle Live on X as well. Give me a follow on X if you haven't already. Share the show with friends, right? I think we have a great little community here, right? That we're slowly building up. We cover so many stories, and hopefully you're hearing things from my show that you're not hearing from other places, right? I try and find a nice variety of stories to cover on the show that give a nice spectrum to people who are watching it. I don't just really want to talk about Trump. So I like finding things that don't have his name in it. Today we had almost every single one of our stories had to do with Trump, but we've had plenty of stories, plenty of episodes in the past where we barely talked about. We talked about a lot of smaller local issues, things like that. So keep watching the show, keep sharing it. The more people got watching, the more time I can dedicate to it, and possibly we can even start to have maybe another day in the future we do a show or some special episodes coming out on Fridays. So we'll see about that. But share the show with friends. Give me a follow online. Send me a DM. Tell me how I'm doing. Comment on my post. Let me know how the show is. Right. Hopefully you enjoyed it. But with that, we will see you back here on Monday, 5 p.m. More stories to cover. We will have so much to cover from this weekend. We have the Kash Patel nomination coming up. We have, starting to see what is really going to start happening within Health and Human Services with RFK. I haven't heard any news about Tulsi yet, but we might have some news about Tulsi and what she's doing as a national intelligence director, national security director. But yeah, we'll see how all that goes. But thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your Wednesday. If you're going somewhere cold, enjoy. Stay warm. Try and hibernate like me. If you're somewhere that's warm, please enjoy the warmth. I'm so envious of you right now. I really wish I was down south right now. Florida sounds like such a beautiful place to be right now at this time of year. But with that, hope you all have a great rest of your day. I have been Hale. Peace out.